Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change and or the inevitable failure of the human race to stop itself from going extinct. As we look prepared to do pretty soon. Just doing a quick video tonight. Guy McPherson put out a video today saying that we have 6 to 8 months before many are extinguished. I don't know. I think he said something like this last year. I give the over under on this prediction, by 2 years. So, or the margin of error of this prediction at 2 years. So, could be this year, could be next year, could be the year after that, but I'd say definitely by the year after that. So anytime in the next 2 years, we're looking at major problems. However, it seems that Trump is trying to beat everybody to the punch. It's not necessarily Trump that's doing it, but it's whoever's mucking about in Syria, which seems to be a lot of people. Seem very intent on pushing us into some kind of conflict there. Is this all theater? I wonder myself if it is. Again, the very logical question keeps getting asked: why would Assad gas his own people? Why would Assad gas innocent people every single time this has happened? It just doesn't make any sense. Really what Assad and the Russians have been doing are trying to keep out rebels, moderate rebels, or ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Al-Nusra or whatever you want to call it, trying to keep these folks from getting in and splitting up the country, breaking up the country, or taking down Assad, or whatever it is that they're trying to do. And you may think that maybe they're trying to, maybe they're attacking rebels, but the story doesn't make any sense. And again, we have the same situation happening where we can't get people to go in and confirm whether this attack actually happened. We have no actual, way to have some third-party verification of whether this attack took place or what they said actually happened, et cetera, et cetera. Trump seems, very, very prepared to launch a strike. Russia wants to strike back. You know the deal. It doesn't look good. I'm going to read an article just kind of covering some of the points. This is from News Hub. U.S. and Russia at risk of direct war over Syria. Expert. This is an expert has this to say. The U.S., UK, and France are set on the collision course with Russia over possible strikes on Syria. After another suspected Syrian poison gas attack and it could lead to direct war, U.S. President Donald Trump has declared that missiles will be coming toward the Syrian military, and Waikato University international relations expert Alexander Gillespie warns a strike is quite likely. Trump has promised that he will do this, and he appears to be trying to let the Russians know it is coming so they are not overly startled when it does. It's good of him, don't you think? Apart from having promised he would do so, he has acted similar in the past with the missile strike around the same time last year into Syria. If he fails to act, he would be guilty of the same weakness he accused Obama of, for not acting after threatening repercussions for crossing a red line. And finally, he needs to look super strong as he goes into his negotiations with North Korea. The Russian military says that it has observed movements of U.S. naval forces in the Gulf. British Prime Minister Theresa May has also reportedly ordered British submarines to move within missile range of Syria and readiness for strikes. Russia warns that any missiles fired at Syria would be shot down and the launch sites targeted. If there is a strike by the Americans, then the missiles will be downed and even the sources from which the missiles were fired. Russian Ambassador Alexander Zazipkin told Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV. The dramatic rise in tension has led to fears of military conflict between the two giants. Professor Gillespie warns Russia is in a very belligerent mood and has had enough of being pushed around. They have spoken very clearly that they will intervene, he told NewsHub. Russia does not tend to issue idle threats. If they shot down the missiles, that is one thing. If they go after the launch sites, as in the planes, boats, subs, or land-based, we are at risk of a direct war. Top U.S. officials agree, saying the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, is likely to respond. Putin sees this as a test of wills, given Trump's tweet, no doubt about it. Former U.S. National Security Council member Michael Carpenter told Politico. I would expect Russia to try hard to shoot down cruise missiles and claim this as a victory, said another expert. Professor Gillespie said this represents an insane risk. Right now, Trump has promised to strike and Putin has promised to respond. One of them has to back down or things are going to get very dangerous. It would be the second strike Mr. Trump has ordered in retaliation for a chemical attack by Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad's regime, but any strike that killed official Russian forces would be a dangerous escalation. U.S. forces killed over 200 mercenaries, mostly Russians, in Syria in February during a failed attack on an American base in Syria. They were, it's funny, U.S. forces, blah, blah, blah. U.S. forces killed over, yes, they were reportedly sent to the conflict by a Putin ally in exchange for oil concessions. You know, and I'm going to read this tweet by Ian Bremer. 200 Russian fighters killed by U.S. in a failed attack on American base in Syria. At some level, it's startling that this isn't the biggest news of the year. Somebody's trying to listen to me on my phone. It's really interesting because I'm not even touching my phone, and Siri keeps coming up like, hey, you asked, you said something? This is crazy. Did you hear? So random release of news, and this is actually from the QAnon boards, that you can be tracked. Obviously, so apparently you can be tracked without the apps that apparently can track you, like Facebook, Messenger, all these apps that are able to access your phone. Apparently it doesn't even matter. Like, it doesn't even matter. You can be tracked, listened to, spied on directly. You probably already know this, but I just, it was interesting to hear this from somebody who apparently claims to have high-level security clearance. However, the Russian government denied any involvement in the attack, blaming it on pro-government militia unit. So to go back to this, I didn't even know this happened. I didn't even hear this happen, that 200 Russian fighters were killed. So 200 Russian fighters were killed directly in an attack, in an American attack, U.S. attack. And this sounds bizarre to me. 200 Russian fighters killed by U.S. Oh, they attacked an American base in Syria. Okay. So anyways, we have escalations, but we also have, you know, people questioning why we're not, you know, making sure what happened, verifying that this is a chemical attack. It also doesn't make sense that we were about, you know, we're announcing that we're pulling out of Syria and all of a sudden this attack happens. Obviously, Trump is, you know, being accused of being a conspirator with Russia, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, he's in a position where he has to kind of look tough against Russia or else be called a sympathizer or a collaborator or, you know, in collusion with. It's a mess. It's a serious mess. Earlier this year, I think I mentioned this news story before, but Congress voted to re-up sanctions against Russia, and I guess Trump vetoed the sanctions, or refused to renew them. Didn't go along with Congress on this, and immediately all papers and people on Twitter were like, "Oh yeah, of course. See, he's he's in bed with Putin. He's Putin's bitch," or whatever. You fucking liberal, crazy, insane people. Because the war drums seem to be coming loudest from the left. So I would love to hear some progressive, liberal, democratic. I'd love to hear some peacenik talk from the left side of the aisle right about now. It would be really awesome if somebody came forward and said, "Hold on," but no, they're all like, "What's he gonna do? What's Trump gonna do? Yeah, if he doesn't do anything, then he's in bed with Russia." This is like such an insane situation. It boggles the mind. And that doesn't mean that I'm a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form, but I do support like some kind of logical thought process by anybody in power right now, because there doesn't seem to be much at all going on. I'm very confused, bewildered, betwixt, bewitched, and frankly, obviously frightened of the situation becoming what it has. To get back to the Guy McPherson thing, I'm going to link that video of his below if you all haven't seen it. It's a short little video on Naturopath's Last. He's basically talking about, how long do we have? He's restating his claim that we will all be gone, that not one human will be left by 2026. Just some super doomy news to chew on. That's what I've got for you tonight, and I'm sorry I don't have anything, but I don't have much better to report on this evening, and I do want to keep this short. Let's see if I can read this thing from Derrick Jensen. I'm gonna read this article from Derrick Jensen from the Orion magazine. "Forget Shorter Showers" by Derrick Jensen. Would any sane person think dumpster diving would have stopped Hitler, or that composting would have ended slavery, or brought about the 8-hour workday, or that chopping wood and carrying water would have gotten people out of the Tsarist prisons, or that dancing naked around a fire would have helped put in place the Voting Rights Act of 1957, or the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Then why now, with all the world at stake, do so many people retreat into these entirely personal solutions? Part of the problem is that we've been victims of a campaign of systematic misdirection. Consumer culture and the capitalist mindset have taught us to substitute acts of personal consumption or enlightenment for organized political resistance. An inconvenient truth helped raise consciousness about global warming. But did you notice that all of the solutions presented had to do with personal consumption, changing light bulbs, inflating tires, driving half as much, and had nothing to do with shifting power away from corporations or stopping the growth economy that is destroying the planet? Even if every person in the United States did everything the movie suggested, U.S. carbon emissions would fall by only 22%. Scientific consensus is that emissions must be reduced by at least 75% worldwide. Or let's talk water. We so often hear that the world is running out of water. People are dying from lack of water. Rivers are dewatered from lack of water. Because of this, we need to take shorter showers. See the disconnect? Because I take showers, I'm responsible for drawing down aquifers? Well, no. More than 90% of the water is used by humans, is used by agriculture and industry. The remaining 10% is split between municipalities and active living, breathing individual humans. Collectively, municipal golf courses use as much water as municipal human beings. Both human people and fish people, aren't dying because the world is running out of water. They're dying because the water is being stolen. Well, let's talk energy. Kirkpatrick Sale summarized it well. For the past 15 years, the story has been the same every year. Individual consumption, residential, by private car, and so on, is never more about more than about a quarter of all consumption. The vast majority is commercial, industrial, corporate, by agribusiness, and government. He forgot military. So even if we took up cycling and wood stoves, it would have a negligible impact on energy use, global warming, and atmospheric pollution. Let's talk waste. In 2005, per capita municipal waste production, basically everything that's put out at the curb in the US was about 1,660 pounds. Let's say you're a diehard simple living activist and you reduce this to zero. You recycle everything. You bring cloth bags shopping. You fix your toaster. Your toes poke out of old tennis shoes. You're not done yet, though, since municipal waste includes not just residential waste, but also waste from the government offices and businesses. You march to those offices, waste reduction pamphlets in hand, and convince them to cut down on their waste enough to eliminate your share of it. I've got some bad news for you. Municipal waste accounts for only 3% of total waste production in the United States. I want to be clear, I'm not saying we shouldn't live simply. I live reasonably simply myself, and I don't pretend that not buying much or not driving much or not having kids is a powerful political act, or that it's deeply revolutionary. It's not. Personal change doesn't equal social change. So how then, and especially with all the world at stake, have we come to accept these utterly insufficient responses? I think part of it is because we're in a double bind. A double bind is where you're given multiple options, but no matter what option you choose, you lose. And withdrawal is not an option. At this point, it should be pretty easy to recognize that every action involving the industrial economy is destructive. And we shouldn't pretend that solar photovoltaics, for example, exempt us from this. They still require mining and transportation infrastructures at every point in the production process. The same can be said for every other so-called green technology. So if we choose option one, if we avidly participate in the industrial economy, we may in the short term think we win because we may accumulate wealth, the marker of success in this culture, but we lose because in doing so we give up our empathy, our animal humanity, and we really lose because industrial civilization is killing the planet, which means everyone loses. If we choose the alternative option of living more simply, thus causing less harm, but still not stopping the industrial economy from killing the planet, we may in the short term think we win because we get to feel pure. And we didn't even have to give up all of our empathy, just enough to satisfy not stopping the horrors. But once again, we really lose because industrial civilization is still killing the planet, which means everyone still loses. The third option, acting decisively to stop the industrial economy, is very scary for a number of reasons, including, but not restricted to, the fact that we'd lose some of the luxuries like electricity to which we've grown accustomed, and the fact that those in power might try to kill us if we seriously impede their ability to exploit the world. None of which alters the fact that it's a better option than a dead planet. Any option is a better option than a dead planet. Besides, being ineffective at causing the sorts of changes necessary to stop this culture from killing the planet, there are at least 4 other problems with perceiving simple living as a political act, as opposed to simply living simply because that's what you want to do. The first is that it's predicated on the flawed notion that humans inevitably harm their land base. Simple living as a political act consists solely of harm reduction, ignoring the fact that humans can help the earth as well as harm it. We can rehabilitate streams. We can get rid of noxious invasives. We can remove dams. We can disrupt a political system tilted toward the rich, as well as an extractive economic system. We can destroy the industrial economy that is destroying the real physical world. The second problem, and this is another big one, is that it incorrectly assigns blame to the individual, and most especially to individuals who are particularly powerless, instead of to those who actually wield power in the system itself. Right on, Derrick. Kirkpatrick Sale again. The whole individualist, what you can do to save the earth guilt trip is a myth. We as individuals are not creating the crisis, and we can't solve them. The third problem is that it accepts a capitalism's redefinition of us from citizens to consumers. By accepting this redefinition, we reduce our potential forms of resistance to consuming. Citizens have a much wider range of available resistance tactics, including voting, not voting, running for office, pamphleting, boycotting, organizing, lobbying, protesting, and when a government becomes destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we have the right to alter or abolish it, per the Constitution, right? Per the Second Amendment, if we're really actually going there. The fourth problem is that the endpoint of the logic behind simple living as a political act is suicide. If every act within an industrial economy is destructive, and if we want to stop this destruction, if we are unwilling or unable to question, much less destroy, the intellectual, moral, economic, and physical infrastructures that cause every act within an industrial economy to be destructive, then we can easily come to believe that we will cause the least destruction possible if we are dead. The good news is that there are other options. We can follow the examples of brave activists who lived through the difficult times I mentioned: Nazi Germany, Tsarist Russia, antebellum United States, who did far more than manifest a form of moral purity. They actively opposed the injustices that surrounded them. We can follow the examples of those who remembered that the role of an activist is not to navigate systems of oppressive power with as much integrity as possible, but rather to confront and take down those systems. Boom. And that is very true. Unfortunately, we won't be taking down the system until things get really, really bad, and then everybody's going to go like, oh man, this climate change thing, it's about to take us over. It's about to take us over. So what are we going to do? Let's start running trucks off the road, or let's start destroying, power plants, or let's start taking down these things that have been killing us for 50, 60, 70 years, but way, way, way too late. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. That's all I have for you all tonight. Hope to be back tomorrow with another video. Hope we're all back here tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. We'll see. Peace.